So if you're a Bond fan in the movies, you have absolutely nothing to go on right now. But fortunately, those folks at Fleming Publications are doing the Lord's work. And on Saturday, they sent out an email, which came as a complete surprise to me, saying that they were going to be republishing 3 James Bond books. It's going to be a very good year indeed. So if you're in any way interested in the literary James Bond, stay tuned and let's chat about it. Hi guys, it's me, and I'm really stoked to be making this video because I'm excited. If you haven't already, you should head over to the website of Fleming Publications. I think it's ianflemingpublications.com. Give them your email address, and then Miss Moneypenny, I don't know if it's the real Miss Moneypenny, sends you an email every so often with exciting news. And on Saturday, we got some very exciting news. Saturday was, sadly, the anniversary of Ian Fleming's death, but they marked that occasion with some really exciting news. They are going to be republishing 3 James Bond books, and this came as a complete surprise to me. I didn't know what IFP's plan was in terms of like moving forward, whether they were just going to publish new books or were they going to revisit the, I think it's ridiculous, something like 41 different James Bond continuation novels or novels of some kind. And that's what they've decided to do. They are republishing with brand new covers, brand new introductions, 3 books. The first is Colonel Sun by Robert Markham. It's not actually by Robert Markham, it's by Kingsley Amis. More on that later. The second one is 0-10 by Raymond Benson. I got to chat to Raymond Benson recently. I've got one of his books right there. Fantastic bloke, brilliant writer. And the third one is James Bond, the authorized biography by John Pearson. And the 2 great things about these 3 books. The first thing is they haven't been buggered around with, as far as I know. They have not been censored. That is still a bone of contention I have with IFP. But the other thing that I'm really excited about is all 3 books are crackers. They're really, really good. Let's talk very briefly about them if you're not familiar. Colonel Sun was the first James Bond continuation novel. Obviously, Ian Fleming passed away. Gilderoy's Publications, which is what has now become Fleming Publications, were like, hey, maybe we should continue the adventures of James Bond. And they came up with this really, really interesting plan. They created a fictional author, Robert Markham. And their plan was to get a famous author or a significant author to write a James Bond book published under the pen name of Robert Markham. And every couple of years they'd publish a new James Bond book, and it would be by a different author, but they all be written by this Robert Markham bloke. They only managed to get the first book out, and that was Colonel Sun. They got Kingsley Amis, no less, to write it, which is pretty damn impressive. And I will be straight up and honest here. Colonel Sun is one of the best James Bond books in the entire canon. Continuation novels and even Ian Fleming's originals. I'd say Colonel Sun is better than some of Ian Fleming's original novels. It's really intense, it's dark, you've got M getting kidnapped, you've got Hammond, who's M's butler, getting slaughtered. You have a torture scene that is excruciating. Like, Ian Fleming was a sadist. He loved writing torture scenes. He loved getting Bond tortured. This one rivals Casino Royale for just sheer, like, it is a cracking novel, and I'm really, really excited by the fact that Ian Fleming Publications are republishing it. I've seen they've got a mock-up. They haven't announced the covers yet. They've got a mock-up, and they've got Colonel Sun by Kingsley Amis. Don't like that so much. I would really appreciate it if they do Colonel Sun by Kingsley Amis writing as Robert Markham, because you need to have that Robert Markham in there. It adds context to what Gilderoy's Publications were trying to do at the time they published that book. I think you're kind of missing a step. Anyway, super excited for that one. The next book in the list is 0-10 by Raymond Benson. Love Raymond Benson. And it was the first full-length novel that he wrote in his series of James Bond continuation novels. I think it's really interesting that they have decided to go straight into Raymond Benson. They've ignored all the John Gardner books, and I don't really blame them for that. I mean, the John Gardner books, he wrote over a dozen of them. They are not without merit. There are some of them I enjoyed. I remember the first one I read was Roll of Honor as a teenager, and I quite enjoyed that. And I've read all of them, and I've quite enjoyed some. Others have been like, you were able to laugh about some of the stuff in them. There was For Special Services, where James Bond hooks up with Felix Leiter's daughter. There was the adaptation of License to Kill. Poor Felix Leiter, who's already lost his arm and his leg, loses his arm and his leg again. I mean, it's hysterical. So the John Gardner books, I can understand. They're a slog. If you're interested in those, Calvin Dyson is doing, he's doing the Lord's work. He is going through the whole John Gardner series and making videos about each and every one. They're wonderful videos to watch. They're much more enjoyable than reading the actual books. So Ian Fleming Publications very wisely said, hey, let's go to the Raymond Benson books. Why? Because the Raymond Benson books were all great. I mean, let's be honest, all of the James Bond continuation novels since Raymond Benson took over, and that includes, Sebastian Faulks, William Boyd, Jeffrey Deaver, Anthony Horowitz, of course, they've all been fantastic. Raymond Benson, I would say, is the man responsible for legitimizing the James Bond continuation novels. He came on board after John Gardner's series of books, and James Bond, the continuation novels weren't taken very seriously at that point. It was like, oh yeah, there are people who like James Bond books. We've got John Gardner knocking them out, whatever. He wrote one, 0-10, the first book. It was set in the modern day. You had a modern day Bond, and it was all based around the handover of Hong Kong from the British to the Chinese. It was very, very much a book written of its time. And I like that because the Ian Fleming books were books of their time. We look back at them now and, we read the Anthony Horowitz books, which are period books. But at the time, James Bond wasn't period. He was a contemporary spy in a contemporary world. And Raymond Benson managed to bring that back to it. And his books, there are some books in the series that are better than others. My personal favorite is High Time to Kill. But all of the Raymond Benson books are bloody good books. And they're bloody good reads. So I'm really excited to see 0-10 back in print. And hopefully we'll get all of them. All of the Raymond Benson books. Isn't that fun? And then, last but definitely not least, we have the James Bond, the authorized biography. I've got a copy of it back here. It's a cracker. John Pearson, who I believe wrote a very good biography of Ian Fleming, he wrote a book. It was a fiction novel, which came up with the conceit of, what if James Bond was a real person? And the idea was that Ian Fleming had written these adventure stories about James Bond to cover up for James Bond's actual adventures. It was like the KGB were supposed to think, oh, if Ian Fleming has written a book about the Goldfinger, whole Goldfinger adventure could not have happened. That was a Russian accent there. It was a really nice conceit, and it was written in the 70s, so you had an older James Bond. It was about his life, his adventures, with the fictional twist in it. It's not the James Bond from Ian Fleming's novels or Raymond Benson's novels. It was a really good book, though. It was really entertaining. It was really thought-provoking. It was kind of the first deconstruction of Bond, but it was done very effectively. And people always say, where do you start in the continuation novels? I always say, Colonel Sun. I always recommend James Bond, the authorized biography. So, yeah, 3 bloody good books hitting the bookshelves soon with new covers, new forwards. I am really stoked about this. I know I've had my troubles with IFP, but they have been knocking it out of the park. You've got Eon not doing anything with the James Bond movies, whereas you have IFP really embracing becoming their own independent publisher, and they've given us some great stuff. I mean, whether you like it or whether you don't like it, I've recorded a fantastic a chat with a bunch of people for the Bond, the bearded Blofeld, Chris, the bearded Blofeld from the Bond Report. We spoke at length about Kim Sherwood's book, and some people liked it, some people didn't, but still, we got it. We're getting another one next year as well, and then we got the end of that trilogy, so that's exciting. Then they produced, out of nowhere seemingly, Charlie Higson's on His Majesty's Secret Service, and we thought we were done there, but no, now they're reprinting these 3 books as well. So I am really stoked and excited about what IFP is doing. I think they are really keeping the Bond flame alive at the moment, and I can't wait to see these books hit the digital bookshelves. And yeah, you will, unlike the Ian Fleming books, which I did not buy in their new editions because they've been censored. Because these books are uncensored, I'm going to buy all 3 of them. Of course I will. Absolutely. That's what I'm here for. I'm here to support James Bond in all his myriad forms. I'm here to support IFP, and so I'll be buying those books, and I hope you do too. Anyway, when we get close to the date, we'll chat about it again. We'll obviously do a video about whether the covers, when they get released, and we can actually see what the books are going to look like. It's a good time to be a literary Bond fan. I don't know. What do you think? Have you read any of the books? Do you have opinions about them? Let me know in the comments section down below. And in the meantime, I will be back soon with another video. Until then, ciao. I'm Roland Hume. I've sold 67,000 copies of my books. If you want to find out how I did it, I've got a link right here you can click. And otherwise, don't forget to subscribe. I've got more videos coming soon. Thank you.